Hello everyone and welcome to the video. In today's video we're going to be talking about the best PvE classes for Lost Ark in 2022 for the NA/EU release. Please bear in mind that tier lists in this game do not actually matter. Play whatever you want, you will clear all content with any class and you can just play whatever you want. Don't feel pressured by this at all, but for those who really want to know and be useful, be picked for groups, this is the video for you. So we'll start off at the bottom and we'll move our way up. So to begin with, in class C we have Paladin. And I don't just mean Paladin, I mean DPS Paladin. DPS Paladin is not going to be great at launch. You're going to need a lot of gear to catch up with everyone and you're just going to do subpar DPS. Paladin is not a DPS class. Try it if you want to, if your group's fine with it, but do not be surprised if you get turned away from groups because people can see your gear and you will have a hard time trying to gain content unless you're with a group of friends who are okay with you doing it, so be warned. So our lowest class on the list is Deadeye. Now Deadeye is just high burst damage, has lots of mobility, you can dash around a lot. You have the cycling of the 3 guns, which takes a bit of a skill gap to actually learn how these work. They feel very flexible and you can be quite useful with providing crit buffs for the whole party. But the cons kind of outweigh everything that's good about them. They rely heavily on back attacks. You have to get very close with the shotgun. The shotgun is where the damage comes from within this class. And since you have to get close, you should be a little bit tanky, but you're not. You're just squishy and very, very low defense coefficient, which means getting to the boss can easily one-shot you at times. Put a step wrong and you'll die. And in this game, there's a lot of AoEs that go out, and that spells bad news unless you have a healer or someone who can give you shields. So yeah, very high skill kept. If you feel comfortable with dodging everything, play him, but be warned that you will get blown up fairly fast. So next up we have Shadowhunters. Now Shadowhunters are quite good, they're quite fun to play and they're quite appealing, but they have big bursts in the form of the demon form, so you can switch between a human and a demon form. They have good damage, good mobility, fairly fast, easy to pilot, nothing too advanced, wide range of different skills, bit of range, bit of melee, lots of skills to use, fairly engaging. But they're not very useful in group content. They're not great for PvE stuff, and they're not really great for PvP either because of the lack of super armor. Also, another weakness is that they're quite fragile. Again, you'll see many of these lower ranked classes are ones which are fragile. In PvE, you've got to take some hits, especially when you progress in fights. And Shadowhunter just can't take too many hits. They get a bit of a HP boost when they're in demon form, but it's really not much to keep them alive. Next up, we have Sharpshooter. Now, Sharpshooter kind of falls into the same category that we talked about before. Good damage, very high mobility, really fun to play, very easy to learn just about, but the weaknesses, low health, low defense, and no support really for the entire wider party, which is kind of a massive, turn off really. A lot of these classes are based on how good they are in party content, and this is just a solo content. If you like zipping around and doing moderately good damage, which is something fairly easy and looks flashy, this could be the person for you. But again, get hit, you're probably going to die, and you'll chew through all those potions that you've collected. Next, we move on to the Soulfist. Now, Soulfist is one of these weird ones. Not great for PvE, but really meta for PvP. This is probably the most standard class you can get. Like, it's always strong. It's never the top strong, so it never really gets nerfed, but it's not weak by any means. It's just a solid pick. You can carry teams in PvP. You got high damage, lots of cool abilities, and you feel strong, even though you might not be the strongest for PvE content. But PvP, definitely recommend. This is like A tier, S tier. But the cons are for PvE, you're squishy, you lack survivability, you can die fairly fast, and it's kind of hard to play as well. You got lots of rotating cooldowns, you have to get in, get out, because you're a bit of a hybrid class in that sense, and it does take a bit of practice to finally master it. So this is why it's so low. But again, if you want to just play PvP, absolutely play this class. An amazing, solid pick. Next up, we have Striker. Now, Striker is quite a good class for PvP. Very powerful, lots of high burst damage and plenty of CC. Lots of mobility as well, you can dash around, really nice for kiting. And there's relatively simple gameplay as well, it's not too hard to grasp off. But some of the cons as well for PvE especially is that it lacks defensive stats. You're really squishy again. You lack speciality stat as well to really go crazy on people. And there's lots of back attacks as well. You have to constantly be at the back of the boss when it's turning constantly and everything, and you're in the middle of a fight, you're trying to dodge everything, can be a bit of a pain to actually play consistently. But again, don't let me put you off, it's a good class for PvP, just might take a little bit of practice to play PvE and a little bit of game knowledge. Next up, we have the Deathblade. Now, the Deathblade is very flashy. very easy to learn and extremely good in PvP. You've got a good mix of high damage and lots of mobility, but for PvE, again, a little bit hard. Most of the skills are again back attacks similar to some of the previous classes, so positioning is fairly key for this. Build variety is extremely limited. You can really only go for like one set of build. Don't play this class if you're too crazy on trying experimenting a ton of different things. And it's quite gear dependent for PvE. You need good gear for this class to be good, but once it is good and once you know how to go to the back and attack there and you get used to the high mobility, really good. Not the most squishy class ever, but your mobility should kind of counteract that. But yeah, solid class. If you want something flashy, play this class. Now, Berserker is the next one up, and I love the Berserker. I think the Berserker is one of the best beginners class that anyone can pick. If you do not know what to play and you're completely stuck and you want someone to tell you to play something, this is a class. I tell you to play Berserker. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what to play, no one stands out, play Berserker. Have him as your first class. He's great. He's very simple, easy to learn mechanics, extremely satisfying in PvE. The Berserk mode is absolutely amazing. You look so cool, you do such high damage, really good engaging skills, but at the same time very, very simple and very easy to pick up, and will teach you the basics of the game very well. Very good in PvE and PvP, a very unga bunga class. Just go in, press your buttons, things go crazy. The cons, there's not too many cons to it, and it pains me to say the cons for this class because I really like it, but there's long animations for lots of attacks. People with high mobility will kite you out, and there's long cooldown for your burst damage as well. It feels a little bit meh outside your burst window. Your burst window when you go Berserker stance is literally the reason why you play this class, and when you're in it feels great, when you're out of it, not so much. Next up we have the Wardancer. Now, some of the pros for the Wardancer is got very high mobility, very good, you can zip around a lot, good string for combo abilities and great damage for PvP and PvE, and very, very decent burst windows. Some of the cons are it's quite straightforward gameplay, you're not going to really be doing too much. You're fairly squishy as well, and if you miss your burst, you're pretty much not going to do the greatest amount of damage in PvE content. The Wardancer as well has lots of back attacks, which are quite hard to hit, so again, very similar to the rest of them. If it's squishy and relies on burst too much, it could be a bit bad, and if you need positioning as well, it takes a little bit of level of extra game knowledge and a little bit extra level of awareness, so that's why I mark them down a little bit, because again, not too useful in group content. Good for solo, good if you're new to the game, but not great. Nothing to write home about. So next up we have the Artillerist. Now, the Artillerist is kind of like my personal favorite class. I just really like classes that have low mobility but really high damage. Kind of just appeals to me. So very, very high damage, a fair amount of damage mitigation, get quite a big shield, lots of super armor so you can actually get your abilities off. Fairly easy, I'd say fairly easy to learn, easy abilities to understand, but to execute a lot harder. And very high destruction and lots of stagger damage. Now, some of the weaknesses are obviously very, very, very low mobility. You are going to get hit by most things unless you have good positioning. Very limited party buffs, and definitely can be very, very hard to master the landing of delayed ability. So you'll often fire something into the air and it'll come down somewhere else. And you have to predict the boss movement and also position yourself well. So it's kind of like a two-pronged thing. Very hard class, I would say, in that regards. But again, very satisfying, very cool to look at, very good for PvE. Can be very good for PvP as well. That shield can do a lot for you. And if you can time where people can be and you can predict their movements, very good class indeed. Next up we have Gunslinger. Now, Gunslinger was actually going to be my main character for starting off, so this is probably going to be quite a nice character for most of you because I really liked it and I think I might have quite a good taste, who knows. So it's very fluid to play with a bit of practice, lots of mobility, lots of damage. It has extra range and more positional play because you're not very close range, unlike Deadeye. You're quite long range, your damage comes from the sniper mainly, and you have to cycle through those three weapons again that I talked about before. Not really that much reliance on back attacks either, so you can just kind of just pound the boss with really long range attacks, and you stay out of most of the damage as well because you're using a sniper. Some of the cons are you're quite squishy, but I feel like this offsets the way that you would be naturally positioned anyway to use a sniper, so you wouldn't get hit by too much anyway. But if you do get hit, again, use some mobility spells, get out of there. Quite difficult to play with the whole rotation, the gun wheel. You need to know what does damage, what doesn't do damage, and you need to know how to rotate. And basically, you gotta think like a sniper. You're gonna be using the sniper most of the time, so don't get in close. Don't get in too close that you're gonna get hit by a ton of stuff. But remember that you can go further away from the boss because you have lots of effective range. Next up, we have Sorceress. Now, Sorceress is really cool. It's your stereotypical mage kind of class. I can imagine a lot of people being very attracted to this class. Very high burst, and you can choose to also do very high sustain damage. You can provide debuffs on the target for your entire party, and it's pretty easy to learn and very, very fun. Some of the weaknesses though is you have a low health pool and low defense stat. Casting skills can also be hard to time as well. You have a little bit of delayed damage. You can also use mobility, but your mobility spells in the special gauge take up damage potential. So you kind of have to play this playstyle of staying still most of the time, kind of similar to like Black Mage. You don't have to stay still too much of the time, but if you do use those mobility spells, you have to remind yourself that, okay, if I put myself in a bad position, I'm then going to do lower DPS, not only because I can't do my animations, but also because it takes away from my gauge. So please keep that in mind when playing this class. But very, very good, very flashy as well. I do enjoy this class. Next up, we have Gunlancer. Now, Gunlancer is actually my main that I'm playing at the moment, and it is very, very good. Very tanky. You get a personal shield, or you can shield the entire group. Very, very, very high burst damage. People don't realize this, but if you build the Gunlancer in a specific way, it's kind of like a hidden build, you do so much damage. And that's only really within the burst window. Once you're out of the burst window, don't do too much, but you offer so much utility to your group. It's a nice tank. You can taunt, you can interrupt. There's lots of stagger damage. It's probably like a must-have. Probably that and a support. Gunlancer is just your stereotypical tank. I say it's a tank. There's not actually a tank within Lost Ark, but if there was going to be a tank, it'd be the Gunlancer, because he's just amazing at the whole tank stereotype. But again, very, very good. Low mobility. Some of the spells take a long time to come out as well, but you kind of make that up with your special gauge where you get a shield, so you can just tank a lot and lots of hits. And often you will be the one who is left alive at the end of boss fights because you are just that tanky. Next up, we have Bard. And now Bard, you'll never be turned away from a group with a Bard. Everyone loves Bards. You are the dedicated support in the game. You can support your team in both PvE and PvP. You are extremely desirable. Everybody wants from your party for high-end progression content. You will never be turned around when playing Bard. You'll always have a group to play with. However, it can be a little bit boring. Some people really enjoy the class playstyle, but it lacks some of these heavy-hitting, more satisfying combat points. You see everyone else doing flashy things and you're not really doing anything too flashy. And that's kind of a bit of a sad point, but if you're okay with that and want to be more useful, then this is a class for you. Again, very, very squishy, requires good positioning and good game knowledge as well. I would highly recommend not making this your first character. Learn the game first and then play a Bard, because a Bard kind of requires good positioning. You need to know what bosses do and when they do it, and when to shield and when to heal, and when to do all your class mechanics. Again, I don't know much about Bard, but I know people who do play Bards, and they are just constantly busy with doing groups and endgame content. So yeah, very good if you want to be useful, but not so great if you want to, you know, look the best. Next up, we have Paladin. Now, Paladin's kind of like a cross between Bard and Gunlancer. You are a solid support and you are a lot more tanky. You have the ability to shield your teammates and manipulate. You have like an aura as well around you, which gives buffs. It's very stereotypical like cleric Paladin, I would like to say. Easy to level than Bard as well. You've got high DPS and you've got a lot more HP than a Bard. Con though, you can get DPS builds and lots of people try and do DPS Paladin and it's just not great, so please avoid this. Paladins don't really have too much of a con actually. You do less damage overall, but you know what you're getting in for. You're getting in for a support and he's just really good, so I can't really think of anything bad about Paladin. You're always wanted for groups. You give amazing PvE buffs to your entire group. This is probably, if you came to this video and wanted to know what the best class was and how you can get into every single group and everyone's going to love you and want you, I would say pick Paladin, because it is pretty good. Again, maybe a bit of a skill curve to figure out what to do, when to press stuff, but it's not too much. It's kind of mindless. It's everything that you have in your kit is pretty much surrounding around auras and shields and lots of AoE support. So again, play this class if you want to play probably one of the most desirable classes in Lost Ark. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll catch you guys later.